Okay, everybody, welcome. We're going to begin. There are people still joining us. We have nearly 2,800 people registered to attend this event. So we will have 1,000 of you with us in this Zoom room, and we hope many, many more joining us on Facebook, and you are all very, very welcome. Just a few words of housekeeping. First of all, the chat is open. We will be posting messages and we will be posting actions that we are asking you to take during the course of this event and in the subsequent few days after this event. And those links will be posted in the chat throughout the evening. And please feel free to post messages saying where you're from and sending greetings and solidarity to your comrades who are joining us. We ask everyone to reflect the values upon which we all stand, and anybody who is posting anything that is not in accordance with those values will be removed from the meeting. We are gathering obviously today on the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, and this is a day that brings reflection, and it is in the first place a day of justified anger. The United Nations established this Day of Solidarity in 1977, presumably in the hope that the encouragement of solidarity and the enactment of solidarity in placing pressure on governments across the world would be a prelude to the end of the oppression of the Palestinian people. And today, 43 years later, we meet at a point where that solidarity is needed more than ever, and at a point where the global movement for solidarity is under attack more than at any point in those preceding 42 years. So today is a day of sadness. It is a day of anger at the fact that the Palestinian people are still having to struggle for their right to enjoy freedom, justice, and equality in their historic homeland. It is a day when we remember and we mourn those who have been lost to that enduring struggle, but it is also a day when we commemorate and we celebrate the continuing resistance of the Palestinian people. We will hear tonight from courageous Palestinian voices who, despite seeing their comrades and their friends cut down by Israeli bullets, who despite experiencing and being threatened with illegal arrest, detention, and even threats of civil assassination, continue to raise those voices in resistance. And today we are joined by solidarity colleagues from around the globe. Our solidarity is in the first place with all of the people of Palestine who continue to resist apartheid, whether living under military occupation, whether living as unequal citizens of the State of Israel, or whether living in exile. But our solidarity too is with each other within the global solidarity movement. The attacks upon our movement are designed to create a chilling effect, to make us fearful of speaking up, to isolate us and place a wedge between the solidarity movement and other broader progressive movements fighting against all forms of unjust power that seek to deprive rights, whether that's on the basis of class, race, gender, or sexual identity. Tonight, we resist all attempts to isolate and divide us. Today, we are reminded that we are a global community, and a global community not just united by what we oppose, but by the values we stand for, by a vision of a better world where those values can flourish. And we are united by our awareness that there is no path to that new Jerusalem that does not travel through the old Jerusalem. So we are delighted to be joined at this rally by trade unionists, by comrades from the Black Lives Movement, by poets and artists, all committed to those principles and to that vision. And finally, as we begin this rally, we remember that solidarity is in the first place an act of hope. It is an act rooted in the fundamental belief that the arc of history bends towards progress, but also in the wisdom that tells us it does not do so unless good people come together to place weight upon it. Now, as I said, today is a place where we rally in solidarity, but it's also a place when we commit ourselves to continued action. And there'll be a number of points in the rally tonight where we're going to ask you to take action. The first action that you're going to take in about 20 minutes, so I'm going to ask you to prepare yourself if you haven't already. We're going to ask you to hold up signs, either saying stop annexation, end apartheid, or sanctions now. So if you haven't prepared a sign, please do so now. And I hope you are encouraged by what you've just seen, that you need absolutely no artistic ability in order to participate in that action. So let's begin our rally. And I am very, very delighted and pleased to welcome the first voice you are going to hear from this evening. This summer, in the midst of all of the attacks on the Solidarity movement, the Trade Union Congress, the body representing millions of workers here in the UK, passed one of its most progressive motions on Palestine that for the first time articulated and described Israel's regime of oppression as meeting the definition of apartheid. And one of the pioneers, one of the voices behind that motion, one of the stalwarts within the trade union movement is our first speaker. He's the General Secretary of the National Education Union. He's here tonight also with a different hat on as the international spokesperson for the Trade Union Congress. Will you please welcome Kevin Courtney?
Thank you very much, and hello everybody. Thanks for being on this important call on the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. You've just heard my name's Kevin Courtney and I'm the Joint General Secretary of the National Education Union in the UK. We're the biggest education union in Europe and we are proud to be affiliated to the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. I'm also the international spokesperson for the General Council of the TUC. The TUC has 5.5 million members in the UK, is also affiliated to PSC, and I am bringing you greetings from both organisations. Trades unions are based on the fundamental principles of solidarity and the unity of working people, and we understand that this unity and solidarity must be international. Working people need to support one another worldwide, to learn from one another, to solidarise with one another, and no more so than in the case of Palestine. Pre-pandemic, my own union organised regular delegations of educators from the UK to visit teachers, parents and others in the occupied territories on the West Bank in Jerusalem. Members on those delegations saw the situation in Hebron, where children have to go to school under the shadow of Israeli soldiers with automatic weapons protecting illegal settlements. They saw the poor treatment of children, legally minors, arrested for stone throwing, and they returned determined to speak out. I'd like to thank all of them and all the members of other unions who raised the question of Palestine in their unions, in their workplace and in their communities. And I would specifically like to thank Louise Regan, a former president of my union, a current national officer and a vice chair of PSC. She has done important work, exemplary work on these matters. Today, the TUC has published a new report on Palestine. In it, we make clear that the TUC is calling on our own government to publicly support ending the illegal military occupation of Palestine, to take firm action to ensure annexation does not go ahead, to speak out in support of protecting all Palestinian human rights, including the right to collective self-determination and the right of refugees to return. We're calling on the UK government to recognise the state of Palestine and to support genuine efforts towards a comprehensive, just and lasting peace based on a two-state solution with Palestinians and Israelis participating as equals in talks. Our report explains how the occupation has suffocated the Palestinian economy. The occupation, the settlements, the checkpoints, the roadblocks, the wall, the gates, the lack of access to natural resources and infrastructure severely affect human rights and the right to pursue decent work. The economy in Gaza is near collapse, blockaded as it is by air, sea and land for more than a decade. Let me finish by saying that I urge all those on the call, all those of goodwill, all those who took part in the campaign against apartheid in South Africa to remember that your work does matter. Remember your commitment, your energy, your efforts do count. Remember the people of Palestine. Redouble your efforts to press your government to act. Remember the people of Palestine. Raise the issue in every forum you have. Raise it in your political party, in your trade union. Raise it in your church, your synagogue, your mosque. Remember the people of Palestine. Remember it is always darkest before the dawn. Remember the people of Palestine, and let's go forward together and complete this historic struggle for justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for your words tonight, and thank you for your continuing work for the justice for the Palestinian people. And our job in the Solidarity Movement is to take our campaign to every corners of our societies, to every arena of influence and decision making. We are extremely proud in the UK that the Trade Union Congress and the 12 major unions in the UK are all affiliated to PSC, and we are extremely proud to have voices like Kevin speaking up for justice. We are very, very close to having 1,000 people in the room. All of you are welcome. Please prepare for your first action, where you're going to hold up in a few minutes' time signs delivering the core messages that we are delivering tonight: to stop annexation, to end apartheid, and calling wherever we are in the world for our governments to take action to hold Israel to account. Now, I'm very pleased to welcome our first poet of the evening. Will you please welcome the fantastic voice of Monet.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me? Yes, y'all can see me? Okay, great. Thank you all for having me. I'm honored to be here. For those of you who don't know, my name is Monet, and I'm a poet originally from Brooklyn, New York, who has organized with the Dream Defenders and Community Justice Project. And we have been a part of organizing delegations and creating solidarity movement and cultural shifting across this country, particularly in the Black community. I'm going to share a little bit about what solidarity means to me, and then I'm going to read a poem. So here we go. You know, solidarity is the outstretched hand and hold. It is the care, concern, and active listening. Listening as presence, exploring unexamined perspectives. It is the engaged witnessing. It is a shared experience between both the listener and the speaker. It is the will to show up, to do, to be fully and present, holistically here. We fight beside one another, yes. We mourn together, yes. And we also commemorate our joy and the shared expressions of love, and how we laugh at the joy that we witness on those we love, and how we eat and share meals with those we love, and how we dance and how we dream, inspired by the connective tissue of freedom dreams. My compassion for Philistine long precedes the delegation that changed everything in my life. In friendship with a fellow Brooklyn poet named Tahani Salah, solidarity was demonstrated to me in the words and the stages of New York City Lower East Side poetry clubs. It was organized through relationships and storytelling. We have witnessed before our very eyes the strength and power of culture and shifting culture through BDS and Black organizers and activists, as well as artists who have actively engaged in shifting the narrative. When others doubted or questioned the role of organizing delegations to the West Bank and 48 territory and defining the connections in our oppression and therefore our vision for liberation, we demonstrated that there was nothing else left to be done. Surely a poem alone cannot free a people, but an entire social movement encouraged and shifted by the truths a poem can reveal is surely the way to freedom. I lift up each and every cultural worker who has stood on the right side of history in the heart of people shaped by the spirit and energy of solidarity. Solidarity is not transactional. True solidarity is anti-capitalist, is anti-colonial, and it is feminist. I lean on radical Black feminism that has always, 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 always demonstrated the most comprehensive examples of true, genuine care and radical solidarity. The same insidious violence that murders us on the streets of Ferguson is the same on the streets of Bethlehem and is the same on the streets of Lagos. It is our responsibility to make those connections, to fight with one another, to love with one another, to dream with one another, and to shift the culture so that one day all the children everywhere lives in a world where they know genuine, engaged friendship and solidarity love. I'm going to read this poem that I wrote after I came back from Philistine with the delegation that we organized in 2015. And here we go. It's called The Giving Tree. After DD Palestine. At the core of suffering, there is always a door, a wall, the knob shouting, they came in violently. Before the sun rose, there was an Israeli flag posted outside Beit Hanina Silwan Sheikh Jarrah. They came in violently for her home, her dignity, or both. Veins on a grandmother's wrist pleading over a stove that fed the faces around it, rusted faucets, cleansing tired hands and rinsing cauliflower, potatoes, carrots, picture frames of memories smiling back to her knocked down. Doors arrest the body, walls are everywhere. If her wrinkles could speak, they'd say, is there a country where humans will find refuge? Her dimple would follow, here is my grandson Muhammad, a poet, please bring him. There is a killing all around. Blood thirsts the ground, land littered by weeping olives. A boy in Galilee demonstrates runs as soldiers chase after. They strike a seal with the base of a rifle. He trips and falls, a seed of peace face down in an olive grove. They shoot him execution style. His parents cannot rid the image of when he first discovered his toes out of their bodies. The baby they brought home together now, a young man, feet fumbling out of the rubble. Witness a child die, and you quickly descend into a realm of demons. Witness your child die, and you become the demon, hurled to the earth, manacled everlasting to who you are after they came in violently. Every Sunday is bloody, every mouth is a house of prayer. They came in violently. Every hand is a God who heals or hurts, heals and hurts. 29 foreheads kneel to worship the ground and never rose again. There was no flag, no supper. 125 open wounds wail the last fast, dawn to sunset and offering. What sort of God murders during invocation in their own home? What God murders at all? Tongues torn from praise mourn, we cried loudly for who we were before, knowing we could not unknow what was felt. We listened loudly, still violently, our laughter startled their grimaces. We came with our joy, our heartache, our pain, shoved through checkpoints with passports, music, customs, beliefs, faith, protest, song, artists, activists, visions in Hebron. A web of wired mesh flickered above us, shards of bottled threat and scraps of garbage thrown by settlers. We were welcomed by Yassin for a meal of makluba. They came in violently, she says, while placing a pile of plates and utensils on the table. Even a fetus is not protected. Tear gas thrown in her courtyard. Soldiers stomped down the door. She was brought to the hospital. Its heart stopped beating, she says. She served us olives she stole from her own trees, and we huddled in the bone-clinging cold, witnessing the want to belong, flung foreign through a door. They came in violently, she says. We came in violently, displaced, Black and American, still, she fed us. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Aja. And my apologies, my screen froze as I was about to introduce you properly, and I was going to remind people or tell people that you are the youngest poet ever to have won the Noura Erakat Poets Cafe Grand Slam champion. and to talk about your participation in the Say Her Name campaign, which highlights police brutality against Black women. But the most important thing about Aja is the power and eloquence of her voice, which you have all heard for yourself, and we thank you for your words tonight. And I want to move on and introduce our next speaker, and I'm delighted and pleased to introduce her. She is a legal scholar, a lawyer, a writer, but one of the most eloquent and erudite activists in the cause of justice for the Palestinian people. Will you please welcome Noura Erakat?
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Aja. Thank you to all the compas on this call for remembering yet again and standing in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Like the continuing history and present history of Palestinians, it is a history of resistance and a history of people power over diplomatic intransigence, imperialism, capitalism, colonialism. And so I want to begin by contextualizing, as Ben started to do, the history of this day that we commemorate. It not only commemorates the day of UN Partition Plan 181 from 1949, but I think more significantly commemorates the moment in which anti-colonial fervor was battling against the United States, battling against apartheid South Africa, against colonial Portugal, right? And so in 1974, the Palestinian Liberation Organization managed to enter the United Nations and to pass Resolution 3236, which overcame the intransigence of Security Council Resolution 242, which was basically a tool of domination and an instrument of defeat that normalized Israel as its presence in the Middle East. In 1974, the Palestinians created an alternative to 242 when they passed 3236, which established that there will be a Middle East peace process, but that Israel need not remain a reality, but can be something else. In response, in 1975, the Palestinians then with their allies, the non-aligned movement and the Third World Revolt, passed Resolution 3375 that insisted that the PLO be included in the Middle East peace process, which Israel and the United States refused to do because they refused to recognize the Palestinians as a people, and instead insisted that Jordan represent Palestinian interests. That same year, Palestinians passed the Resolution 3379 condemning Zionism as a form of racism and racial discrimination against these world superpowers. This is a history of protest. In 1976, the UN established the UN Committee for the Rights of the International Committee in solidarity with the Palestinian people, and introduced a resolution that would end this conflict, that would bring and usher freedom. And it was the United States who vetoed that resolution, like it has so many others, in 1976. And the year later, in response, the UN established November 29th as the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people as part of protest to the United States, as part of resistance to imperialism, as part of resistance to ongoing domination of colonial powers. That's why Palestine today remains so much more than Palestine. So often it's used as an analogy because in fact, it is an analogy. It is the one of the few remaining agenda items on the anti-colonial agenda, on the third world agenda of the non-aligned movement. Unlike all other countries that have achieved self-determination, some form of independence, Palestine remains an outstanding issue and representative, a thorn in the side of the third world. It is why today the United States and colonial powers critique the overemphasis on Palestine in the United Nations and say that the United Nations is biased because of the number of resolutions, or say that it's biased because it has a special issue, it's special item number 7 and the Human Rights Council. And that's not because of an overemphasis on Israel or bias for the Palestinians. It's because this is the agenda item that has yet to be realized. Freedom for Palestine is a people's issue. It is people power over the international community. And because it has been so weaponized against the people, it is also the gateway to unravel other solidarity movements, including in 1975, when Palestine was added to the agenda in the Decade Against Racism. France, the United Kingdom, the United States tried to unravel the world movement against apartheid by pointing out the issue of Palestine. In 2001, at the Durban Review Conference in South Africa, when there was a call to identify Israel as an apartheid state and a call for the United States to pay reparations to the descendants of African peoples, it was the issue of Palestine that unraveled the Durban Review Conference in 2001. In 2016, when the Black Lives Matter movement released its platform declaring solidarity with the Palestinian people, endorsing BDS. It was the right that attempted to unravel the BDS by highlighting their solidarity with Palestinians. It is the backdoor issue through which progressive agendas are unraveled. The defense of Palestine is the defense of this progressive radical agenda. The defense of Palestine, the resistance against Israeli colonialism, apartheid, settler colonialism, is resistance to global imperialism, to capitalism, and to domination. So today, as you stand with the Palestinian people, Palestine stands in solidarity with you. This is about the future. Palestine is more than a metaphor. It is actually us, our resistance in practice. Thank you.
Noura, thank you for your powerful words. And we all know, I spoke at the beginning of this rally about the assaults on the solidarity movement. And we all know the attempts to reframe the solidarity movement through the mechanism of redefining anti-Semitism. And by doing so, to try to prescribe two things, to try to stop us accurately describing the structure of power that Israel has established over the Palestinian people and naming it as a racist structures of power that meets the definition of apartheid, and an attempt to prevent us bringing the facts of history into the public domain. So it is crucial that we have voices like Noura that remind us of three things, that remind us, first of all, of the nature of that structure of power, that remind us of the roots of the history of this struggle, and that the rights the Palestinian people are claiming are rights rooted in international law, and to remind us of the interconnectedness of this struggle with all struggles against unjust forms of power, and in particular that there is no coherent anti-racist struggle that does not have the struggle of the Palestinian people for freedom, justice and equality at its heart. Thank you, Noura, for your words and for your activism. I'm now going to move on, and we are delighted to have so many Palestinian voices at this rally tonight. I'm going to introduce you and welcome another one. He's an academic. He is a founding member of the British Palestinian Policy Council, but most importantly, and I should say this because he is my boss, he is the chair of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in the UK. Will you please welcome Kamel Hawwash?
Thank you very much indeed, Ben, and hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. Not only am I a Palestinian, but I'm proud to have been preceded by Noura, who comes from or hails from East Jerusalem, from Abu Dis, I think, Noura. Ben comes from West Jerusalem, and I come from the old city of Jerusalem. So this is very much a takeover by the Jerusalemites at the moment. We are today looking at the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. I am reminded that Ben talked to us about anger, the anger that Palestinians feel every year. I'm going to give you two examples of that. I was very angry when my father died here in the UK, and I wasn't able to take him back home to bury him in Jerusalem, where he was born. I was very angry when in 2017 I was denied entry to Palestine because of my work in the PSC and the promotion of the boycott, divestment and sanction movement. But I also felt the solidarity then, because as soon as I came back and people knew what had happened, I was invited to address the main conference of the National Union of Teachers that Kevin was the General Secretary of then, I think, and is still involved in the NEU. And the love and solidarity I had really was so important to me, because I felt completely that I wasn't alone. I very much enjoyed the words, the poetry we had from Manja a few minutes ago. Language does matter, and I'm going to say a little bit about language now. First of all, I want to read this to you. This was said about the Balfour Declaration itself in a biography by someone who is well known to you, and I'll tell you the name in a minute, who described the Balfour Declaration as a bizarre, tragically incoherent, and an exquisite piece of Foreign Office fudgerama. That was Boris Johnson, who is now the Prime Minister of the UK. Language also matters because apparently every time there is some oppression that the Israelis carry out, or in particular when they break international law yet again, they have to look for words to describe their feelings. Okay, it's not action, it's feelings. So the latest was when Israel announced it would be constructing 540 units in Har-Homa. What the UK and Jerusalem said, the UK is deeply concerned by Israel's decision to establish the construction of 540 new buildings in the settlement of Har-Homa. Settlements are illegal under international law. We urge Israel to reverse this decision immediately. There is no or else. Okay. A few years ago, I wrote an article about this in which I searched for all the words the Foreign Office here used to describe its feelings about Israel breaching international law. And I came up with the following: concerned, deeply concerned, extremely concerned, profoundly concerned, deplores, very disappointed, deeply disappointed, extremely disappointing and unhelpful, provocative action, provocative and deeply counterproductive, and finally then extremely worrying. So they're very good at trying to search for words to describe the atrocities, but they will do nothing about them. Recently, demolitions. Most recently, they tweeted, the UK joined other members of the diplomatic community at Khan al-Ahmar on Friday. The UK remains concerned by any plans to demolish the village. In all but the most exceptional circumstances, demolition of Palestinian property is contrary to international law. And they said similar things about house evictions. It's now become a must for the delegations particularly from Europe to go to either to demolitions or evictions, to have their photographs taken, to listen to the story and the worries of these people who are having their houses demolished or they're being evicted from it. But the new word that's come about, I like this very much. The new word was the following: the UK and like-minded missions. Like-minded missions today visited the village of Humsa al-Qa'iyya in the Jordan Valley to hear from local residents after Israeli authorities demolished 70 Palestinian homes and structures, causing unnecessary suffering to residents, including 41 children. They went with like-minded missions? Isn't this just completely outrageous? And everyone should be out there, but they continue to search for new words that they can use. And finally, we need to take action, and you've heard that we've had here quite a lot of actions through the Palestine Solidarity Campaign this week, and we're moving to our next one, which will be the lobby of Parliament next week. And we need that because we need to continue to remind everyone, British government, MPs, everyone who is connected or who is a decision maker, that we will not let this issue go. No matter what people, whether the Gulf states normalize or not, whether they describe what we do as somehow immoral, which it isn't, we will continue to tell the story of the Palestinian people. We will resist, just like everyone in his own people right to resist, or they demonstrate to resist. The Palestinians will find creative ways to resist until they secure their legitimate rights and until every refugee is able to go home. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Kamel. A minute ago, a little flicker at the bottom of my screen flashed up to tell me that we now have 1,000 people joining us in this Zoom room, and many, many more on Facebook. And then almost simultaneously, I received a WhatsApp message from somebody who wasn't able to join us tonight, but is watching and wanted to send a message of solidarity. So let me read it to you. Please convey my greetings on the UN Day for Palestine of my support for full recognition of Palestine my opposition to occupation and annexation, and my support for Palestinian refugees. We must respect the human rights of all people, and that message comes from Jeremy Corbyn. So I hope you are all getting ready. You've got about 10 minutes. So if you didn't come prepared, please go away now, write your messages. These are the core messages we're taking at this rally tonight. Stop annexation, end apartheid, sanctions now. So we're going to come to those very, very shortly. But first of all, I am delighted to welcome our next speaker, who is in every sense of the word a star. I would say this, wouldn't I, but it is true that she is one of my favourite actors, many of your favourite actors, an outstanding, eloquent voice, but beyond that, someone who has always stood up for many causes of social justice and been a voice standing up for the Palestinian people and unafraid to stand up for the Palestinian people. Will you please welcome Maxine Peake?
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be asked to be here this evening to stand in solidarity with the people of Palestine. But I'm not going to speak. I'm going to read some beautiful words from Seamus Heaney, his poem, The Cure at Troy. Human beings suffer. They torture one another. They get hurt and get hard. No poem or play or song can fully right a wrong inflicted and endured. History says, don't hope on the side of the grave. But then, once in a lifetime, the longed for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme. So hope for a great sea change on the far side of revenge. Believe that a further shore is reachable from here. Believe in miracles and cures and healing wells. Call miracles self-healing, the utter self-revealing double take of feeling. If there's fire on the mountain and lightning and storm and a God speaks from the sky, that means someone is hearing the outcry and the birth cry of a new life at its turn. It means once in a lifetime that justice can rise up and hope and history rhyme. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. That's a wonderful poem. And I'm really pleased that you chose to read it tonight, because we need to reclaim that poem because it's been co-opted by Joe Biden, as some of you will know. And it belongs at meetings like this because it speaks powerfully and eloquently, as does Maxine. And we are delighted to say, and you should be pleased to hear, that Maxine has 2 slots tonight. So you're also going to hear from her reading 2 more poems from 2 fantastic Palestinian poets in the second half of this meeting. Okay, after we've heard from our next speaker, we are going to take our first action of the evening. So please get your signs ready. I've also had a prompt from my staff team, who will not forgive me if I do not do this, but we have a very important fundraiser for PSC's work coming up next Saturday. You can find the details in the chat. And it's a fun fundraiser. It's a cook along with the amazing Palestinian chef Maha Salah. So you join with colleagues, you cook a Palestinian meal, and simultaneously you raise money that will enable PSC to take forward its campaigning. So please, if you haven't already joined that, please do so. I am really now delighted to introduce the last speaker from this first half of our rally. We have spoken about the interconnectedness of our struggles. We have spoken about the centrality of the Palestinian struggle for freedom, justice and equality to the broader anti-racist movement. We have all in the past few months and years sent our solidarity to the global movement for Black lives. The Black Lives Matter movement has proudly and strongly, consistently, despite enormous pressure, stood up in solidarity with the Palestinian people because they fully recognize the synergies in the struggle. And we are delighted to welcome a key voice from that movement in the UK, a writer, an activist, a warrior for justice. Will you please welcome Joshua Virasami?
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this beautiful and very important occasion, and thank you for the introduction, Ben. I want to first and foremost, as an organizer in the Black Lives Matter movement, express the inextinguishable solidarity and camaraderie toward the Palestinian struggle for liberation and self-determination. A struggle which has been a North Star for Black freedom struggles from apartheid South Africa, as people have said, to Trump America, to Boris Britain right here, and right across the world, where working people resist racism, fascism, and imperialism. Now, some people say solidarity with Palestine has become a fault line for Black politics in today's time. And to that, I want to say it only poses an issue for those whose anti-racist politics have wings clipped by a chauvinism which has no place in any of our struggles. Freedom for Black people is hinged and has always been hinged on the freedom of Palestinian people. In the United States, as here in Britain, as Ben said and as Noura said, innumerable organizations from companies to NGOs, broadcasters to journalists have rescinded their solidarity and their resources from our movements because of our determination to struggle with and learn from our Palestinian friends. This reactionary, transactional solidarity belongs in the dustbin of history and can never deter us. In this time specifically, I want to express solidarity most directly to Palestinian healthcare workers who are under-resourced, under military occupation, and who are risking lives to save others, trapped in a routine of work, fight, hope. Vijay Prashad is a brilliant Indian journalist, historian, thinker, was meditating on the Palestinian freedom struggle last week. And he wrote about when he first saw Mahmoud Darwish speak in Palestine to an assembly of writers. And he wrote these words and it resonated deeply with me. So I'm going to repeat them here. And Darwish said, "We have an incurable malady, hope. Hope in liberation and independence. Hope in a normal life where we are neither heroes nor victims. Hope that our children will go safely to their schools. Hope that a pregnant woman will give birth to a living baby at the hospital and not a dead child in front of a military checkpoint. Hope that our poets will see the beauty of the color red in roses rather than in blood. Hope that this land will take up its original name, the land of love and peace. Hope." Mariam Kaba, the great abolitionist, American abolitionist, and one of the defining thinkers of the Black Lives Matter movement, teaches us that hope is a discipline, it's a practice, it's a meditation amidst chaos. And in this discipline, I'm reminded of the forebearers of my own freedom struggle, the discipline of hope which George Jackson maintained. George Jackson, the imprisoned field commander of the Black Panther Party, who hand-wrote Samir al-Qasim's poem, "I Defy," in his prison cell. And there's something kind of humorous, if not just beautiful, that for so long this poem circulated in America, republished once being found in George Jackson's cell, mistakenly thought to be written by George, because there were so many similarities in the tone and in the struggle. And importantly, in George's writings, a generation was inspired to think more critically about our political prisoners. And so now, again, more than ever, I want to express solidarity and with the abolitionist cause ringing aloud out of our movement, and with COVID-19 specifically massacring prison populations, I want to loudly raise the call for the freedom of Palestinian prisoners. Freedom for Khatam Safin, the president of the Union of Palestinian Women's Committees. Freedom for Khalid Jarrah, a leader of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Hope, funnily enough, like hope, my father, who's a bit hard-nosed, used to say, hope is a poor ally. He used to tell me that, and he used to repeatedly tell me that. And perhaps there is some truth to this. But on this day, the International Day of Solidarity with our Palestinian comrades, with the struggle for freedom and dignity, I think we might celebrate hope. Hope because we are not just victims, right? We are not just suffering. Hope because we are fighting. The late, great Black British revolutionary Darcus Howe, who always stood for Palestinian liberation and is one of our kind of important thinkers in the Black Lives Matter movement, would always say, we are victims, yes, but only to the extent that we are in the process of becoming protagonists. So to all those brave protagonists in the Palestinian struggle for freedom, I say, Black Lives Matter will forever and always be raising the flag of Palestine and shouting solidarity forever.
Joshua, thank you. Thank you for the power of your words. Thank you for the power of your activism, and thank you for your solidarity. Okay, we're going to take our first action of the evening. There will be 3 points where we are going to pause to enable you to take action. And for us in the UK, this event comes as part of a whole week of action that we have been taking. On Wednesday, and we want to pay tribute to them, students across the UK took part in actions calling for their universities to divest from all companies that are complicit in Israel's violations of Palestinian human rights. Yesterday, you would have seen there was a day of action where across the country, more than 60 PSC branches took creative actions supported by civil society organisations and by all of the key trade unions in the UK. And as Kamel said, next Wednesday, we are taking the core messages of this week of action into a virtual lobby of Parliament with hundreds of activists lobbying their MPs. And there are 3 core messages that we are all delivering. Firstly, stop annexation. And when we say that, we are doing 2 things. We are nailing the lie that Israel has abandoned its plans for de jure annexation. It has merely suspended them, but we are focusing on the reality of the ongoing colonization and de facto annexation of Palestinian land. We are calling for an end to apartheid. We are saying, let us understand, let us accurately describe, and let us take action against a system of power that meets the definition of apartheid, whether it's visited upon those living under military occupation, whether it's visited upon those living as unequal citizens of the state of Israel, or whether it's visited upon Palestinians in exile and denied their inalienable right to return to the homes from which they were expelled. And finally, we say, and Michael Link, the UN Special Rapporteur, spoke to us last week, and he reminded us of this fact. He said, this occupation, this system of unjust rule will not die of old age. It will require international pressure such as was applied against South African apartheid. So our third message is sanctions now. Sanctions from governments, wherever you're watching this. Call on your governments to take action to employ sanctions. Call for your public bodies to disinvest from complicit companies. So I'm going to ask you now, we're going to take a photo of this, we're going to tweet it out. Please then retweet. If you go onto JVP's account, I'm sure you'll see it there. Go onto PSC's Twitter account, go onto BNC's, retweet this image. Let's all hold up the signs and let's get this message out to everybody. Okay, thank you all. And that will be whizzing its way across the internet. So get retweeting. So we now turn to the final part of this section of the rally. And once we have heard our next performance, then the MC role will be picked up by the fantastic Stefanie Fox from our wonderful allies and comrades in Jewish Voice for Peace in the United States. So we have a message of solidarity tonight from the trio Joubran, and they have recorded this performance for us to play. So will you please sit back and listen to the wonderful music of the trio Joubran.
Incredible. Thank you so much to La Trio Joubran. Gorgeous, inspiring, powerful music to ground us and remind us why we're here. I'm Stefanie Fox, and I am so moved to be in this virtual crowd with friends and comrades across the world, 1,000 of us here in this room, many more watching beyond on Facebook. I am heartened because the size of this crowd and the depth and beauty of all the offerings we've heard so far remind us that we are long into the work of building a movement in solidarity with Palestinians fighting for rights and freedom. You know, as an organizer, I'm really familiar with the fact that we often tell the stories of the latter days of successful movements for justice. You know, the anti-apartheid movement accelerating toward victory, the march-ins and sit-ins of the Black freedom struggle at their peak. But we also know that successful campaigns for justice are always rooted in decades of slow, steady movement building. The call for global boycott of South African apartheid began in 1959. I think about how Congressman Ron Dellums stood up every year for 15 years, demanding that the US divest from South Africa. 15 years, lonely at first and joined by millions by the end. Each day for more than 70 years, Palestinian leaders like those that we're blessed to be hearing from today have been carving a path forward toward freedom and justice, inviting the rest of the world to join in. Those are long years, and it is important to mark the toll, the irretrievable losses of each of them. Let us mark time by grieving the unending catastrophe of the Nakba, by remembering the 700,000 Palestinians Israel made refugees, the hundreds of villages Israel destroyed. Let us mark these past 4 years, the Trump-Netanyahu alliance granting Israel even greater impunity to steal Palestinian land and water, enforce racist and discriminatory laws, and cement apartheid on the ground. Let us mark time even just this past month, the Nakba continuing with the IDF carrying out the largest West Bank demolition in a decade, ethnically cleansing the entire Palestinian village of Kirbet Humsa. How rates of COVID are spiking among Palestinians in Gaza who are already surviving an Israeli-created open-air prison that UN officials have described as a medieval siege. Every single day, Palestinians live under Israeli apartheid, and injustice is a crime. And while solidarity is about understanding that the years are long with grief and rage, it is also critical to see how the years are strong with the growth of this grassroots, internationalist, anti-racist, intersectional struggle that we're feeling here today. Palestinians have been resisting and organizing and leading the world in slow, steady movement building every single year. It's working. Here in the US, where I'm calling in from, a full 75% of Democrats prefer democracy and equality for all to Israel's discriminatory status quo. A majority of Democrats support sanctions on Israel to stop settlements, And where's my sign? Sanctions now, 1 in 5 American Jews under 40 supports boycott. Companies that profit from Israeli apartheid face divestment globally. There are no lone congressmen asking for divestment. We are crowded into these online rallies, sold out, shouting from the rooftops. And with each passing years, we've been building relationships, forging joint struggle against violent systems of policing, militarism, and colonialism all over the globe. And we've been shifting the common sense toward a vision that only divesting from those brutal systems and investing in solidarity with one another will build real safety and freedom for all people. So on this International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, I am looking both back and forward, understanding that we are standing on a road built by many, and feeling the energy in this rally today makes me certain that this movement, led by Palestinians, joined by so many of us around the world, is speeding the clock toward justice. And so we'll on with some more amazing speakers. Next up, we're going to hear from William Shoki, who is a 21-year-old philosophy student at the University of Witwatersrand, where he is the chairperson of the Palestine Solidarity Committee. He works as a land rights researcher and has previously worked as a researcher for the upcoming Museum and Archive of the Constitution at the Hill. He writes political commentary that shouldn't be missed and cultural criticism for the continental blog, Africa is a Country, and spreads his spare time across a variety of organizations, including the South Africa BDS Coalition. We're so honored to have you, William. Take it away.
Jerusalema, ikhaya lami, ngilondoloze, uhambe nami, zungangishiye ilana. Thank you very much, Stefanie, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for having me today. I should apologize, first of all, for my absolutely horrendous singing, and I can imagine that in comparison to the fantastic music that you just heard from Joubran, that your ears now feel more impoverished after being so wonderfully nourished by those musicians. But I decided to start by singing that song because truly, if you are someone who stayed connected and who stayed aware of global cultural trends, then you must have heard of the song from South Africa. And I don't have the voice of Nomcebo Zikode, nor do I have the musical talent of Master KG. But I decided to begin with the song because it's been such a phenomenon this year, and it's a song that has Jerusalem in its name. And for many people in South Africa, especially, and in the solidarity movement here in South Africa, when the song first burst into the scene, I think a lot of us were extremely skeptical. We were quite worried that the song that was gaining traction and popularity had Jerusalem in its title and its lyrics, and being this fusion gospel song was expressive of a yearning for the city of Jerusalem, and a specifically religious yearning. But I think the reason I wanted to talk about the song today is because what I think we started to realize over the last few months is that the song speaks to something much more powerful, much more deep, and much more fundamental in the human condition. And I just want to outright acknowledge the phenomenal work that key members of the South African BDS Coalition, some people in the South African Solidarity Movement like Nadia Amer and Shamsan have done to produce these fantastic Jerusalem dance videos, which are a collaboration between young South Africans and young Palestinians. The most recent one, if you haven't seen it yet, was dropped on the anniversary of the Balfour Declaration on the 2nd of November with the Popular Arts Center based in Palestine. And these incredible videos that I think have been circulating widely across the world. And I think there's a reason why that's the case, which is that I think what the Jerusalem phenomenon is expressive of is a moment where human beings across the world are bearing witness to the tremendous injustice of the pandemic. They're bearing witness to the devastation it has wrought, but also the inequalities that it's exposing, that it's showing how normal was the problem. The reason why everything has been so awful is because we have designed an economic system, a political system of imperialist global capitalism that is incapable of distributing the needs that people need in order to survive, of giving them a life in which they can feel affirmed, in which they can belong, and in which they can self-determine. So what I think the song is about, and the lyrics that I just sang right now in isiZulu, mean Jerusalem is my home, save me, take me with you, do not leave me here. And Jerusalem, which means city of peace, we know is anything but what this speaks to is a longing for a new Jerusalem, and not as a religious idea of a new Jerusalem. And it's interesting that Master KG himself has repeatedly said in interviews that he isn't religious. He's written this incredible gospel song, but he's not religious. He's not a practitioner of any faith and doesn't identify with any faith. And in fact, that's what's made him amenable to being open to learning about the Palestinian struggle, as he's indicated in the last couple of months. But the yearning that it indicates is for a new world. It's for a new city on a hill, motivated by the spirit of humanity, rather than believing that this is going to be created by some deity existing in a land up above. And I think it's especially fitting, I was saying to a lot of friends here in South Africa that these Jerusalem dance videos were being reproduced across the world with breathtaking speed. But, you know, we saw very few from the United States of America. And not to hate on the United States of America, there's plenty of reasons to hate on the United States of America. But what's interesting is that the city on a hill, this idea of the city on a hill, was first projected by, you know, John Winthrop, who was a colonizer from Massachusetts, and it permeated through the history of America. Ronald Reagan at some point projected this image of a city on a hill, America as this beacon for the world of democracy and liberty. And I think what's starting to happen now as American hegemony is declining is that people are realizing that that model of a city on a hill isn't what we want, doesn't represent a world underpinned by values of equality, justice, and freedom at all. And that in America's support of Israel, this actually existing city on a hill is the surest proof of how this idea has been co-opted by right-wing forces in order to affirm and entrench their own power. So this yearning for a new city on a hill, which is, I think, the same yearning that motivated comrades here in South Africa during the anti-apartheid struggle, that has motivated the Palestinian liberation movement, that motivates really any struggle across the world. And I think it connects with this idea of hope that Joshua spoke about so eloquently right now. This yearning for a new city on a hill, I think what a lot of people are realizing for the first time in a long time, because we'd suffered 10 years of neoliberalization, 10 years of our political horizons dimming and dimming. But I think what this pandemic has done, and what we'll slowly start to see in the coming years as we start to really take stock of what we've all experienced this year, is that I think for the first time, people are starting to realize that this new city on a hill is for us to build. And I think we need to tap into that energy. I think it's out there. It's definitely here in South Africa. I've used this song to introduce people to the Palestinian liberation movement, and they can connect to it almost instantaneously. And in our struggle, in our advocacy, we must always project this idea of a new city on a hill, but always emphasize to people that we don't have to wait for some savior to deliver it to us, that it's for us to build. And we are going to build it wherever we are. We're going to build it with the Palestinian people. We have been building it for many, many years, and it's going to emerge from all of those efforts. So I just want to say that it's a moment where I think there's a lot of darkness in the world. There's a lot of reasons to feel in despair and to feel miserable about the state of things. But I'm confident that the city on the hill is on the rise, but it's up for us to decide whether or not we're going to build it, and we can. And tonight affirms my belief that it is indeed possible that we can. Thank you.
William, I loved your singing. And also that was such a beautiful message. And I feel that building even here in the room, as you said, and so grateful for the invitation for us all to take part in it together in this movement. So thank you so much for those gorgeous remarks. I'm very excited to get to pass the mic to someone much more familiar and better at holding one, to Amer Zahr, a Palestinian-American comedian and political activist who I can't wait to hear from.
All right. Well, thank you, Stefanie. Good afternoon, everybody. Hello. I'm waving to everyone on the screen, so feel free to wave back to me. I'm a stand-up comedian, so I need a little interaction. Okay, wonderful. Now, we have a problem here because they have told me that I have 5 minutes to speak, and it takes Arabs 15 minutes to say hello and 45 minutes to say goodbye. So let me just start by saying now, I'm almost done. Okay, let me start saying that now, and then I'll say it periodically throughout my talk as well. Well, I am very honored and humbled to be with all of you today. Thank you for the Palestine Solidarity Committee of the UK for hosting this and for putting this all together. My name is Omer Zahr. I am a Palestinian from Nazareth. I'm not the Palestinian from Nazareth. There's one of them. He's very important. You all talk to him every Sunday, but I am a Palestinian from Nazareth. But I do know that that other Palestinian from Nazareth, yes, I'm talking about Jesus. I have to tell everybody all the time, Jesus is one of us, okay? He didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. He was not from Texas, all right? He was one of us. He probably looked a lot more like Ben Jamal or Kamel Hawwash than he looked like Brad Pitt, all right? He didn't look like any of those guys. But I do remember he said this. He said, that which you do to the least of my brethren, you do to me. That which you do to the least of my brethren, you do to me, and I'm honored to be with all of you and call all of you my brethren today. As we get ready to celebrate the dawning of another year, 2021, we should remember who's with us and remember who's not. Palestinians stand strongly with the movements for Black liberation around the world, whether they are in South Africa, whether they are in England, or whether they are right here in the United States of America. Just this year, we witnessed the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, accompanied sadly and tragically by the murder of Iyad al-Hallat, shot multiple times by Jerusalem police as he was simply going to a class for his special needs. No accountability. We Palestinians know what it feels like to be shot because of who you are. It's one thing when somebody thinks you're not worth any sort of human rights. It's another thing when that person is holding a gun to your head every day. And so when it comes to Palestinian lives and Black lives, we know what that means. But this is a rally. And let me say, you know, I know it's weird for us to do these rallies virtually. I grew up at rallies. Okay, we came to America when I was 3. My parents used to take us to downtown Philadelphia to meet with anti-apartheid protesters for the struggle in South Africa. And we used to go to Palestinian rallies. I would wake up at 7 a.m. and by 10 a.m. we were in New York City. Now I want you to know, we Palestinians chant, and we don't care if it rhymes or if it doesn't rhyme. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your racist war. 5, 6, 7, 8. Free Palestine. We don't give a shit. It doesn't have to rhyme. All of you can say it together with me. Let's all say it together. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your racist war. 5, 6, 7, 8. Free Palestine. See, it feels good. It doesn't need to rhyme. And all of us can do that all the time. I have to tell people a lot about our heritage. I live in America where people don't understand. I'm almost done, by the way. I live in America where people don't understand history, right? We come in Palestine from one of the cradles of history, one of the cradles of civilization. In America, somebody says this building is 50 years old and they think it's a big deal. And then you're walking around Jerusalem and you're eating a falafel sandwich and you say to the owner of the restaurant, tell me about this restaurant. And he says, well, Jesus ate there. Okay, so we come from a real history. And I know that if Jesus were still around today, he would not be hanging out at Trump rallies. Guess what? He wouldn't even be hanging out at Biden rallies, all right? He would be holding a megaphone, yelling Black Lives Matter. He'd be chanting no justice, no peace. He'd stand with George Floyd. He'd stand with Iyad al-Hallat. He would tell politicians that killing up or covering up the murder of Laquan McDonald in Chicago 5 years ago doesn't just make you a terrible person. It means you shouldn't get appointed to an office like Joe Biden is trying to do with Rahm Emanuel today. And I watched Laquan McDonald in Chicago. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about. The young man shot by the Chicago police 16 times, walking around brash and violent and audaciously in front of the police. I know a million Palestinian kids like that who do that every day. Does that mean that our lives are worth anything less? Of course not. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your racist war. 5, 6, 7, 8. Free Palestine. That's what I say to everybody every day. I'm almost done. Don't worry, Stefanie. I have 7 more pages here to get through in my 5 minutes. Okay. Let me tell you a story. Everyone talks about Jerusalem. I heard Ben talking about it. I heard Kamel talking about it. Noura is from Jerusalem. I go to Jerusalem a lot. I don't visit Palestine. I always say that I return to Palestine whenever I go to Palestine. We're just on a long vacation in America. We're going to all go back to our homeland right there. Full right of return for everybody. But a few years ago, I was in Jerusalem. I was staying in the old Jerusalem hotel right outside the old city. I would go through the old city storied alleyways, the ancient stairways, the vibrant markets, all that kind of stuff. Now, the Arab residents of the old city have been present for centuries, okay? That's just the reality. Even today, in the old city, something like 90% of the residents are Arabs. And the Israelis have done something funny with the street signs in Jerusalem. You know, now the signs on all the freeways, they used to say in English, Jerusalem, in Arabic, Urshalim, and then in Hebrew, Urshalim, and then in Arabic, Al-Quds. Now, what the Israelis have done, because they think they can trick us, is they write in English, Jerusalem, in Hebrew, Urshalim, and then in Arabic, they write Urshalim in Arabic, and then in parentheses after it, it says Jerusalem, like we're going to forget. Like this is just the afterthought, you know. This is what they're doing now because they've given, by the way, things are not going very well for them. So they've given up. They're trying all these other things to try these things. And I thought, you know, is this stuff going to work? I was angry when I saw it. and they've done this renovation of the road signs, and then I went back to the old city, walking around the old city, and yeah, I saw some teenagers with their fatigues holding their M16s, but when I saw who they were pointing their guns at, they were pointing their guns at restaurant owners serving falafel and shawarma and hummus. In other words, I saw Palestinians and, in parentheses, some Israeli soldiers. Okay, just some on the side, just an afterthought. I saw Israeli flags flying around here and there, but when I saw what they were flying over, I saw people speaking Arabic, using wildly unnecessary hand gestures, kissing each other on the cheek too many times. In other words, I saw Palestinians and some Israeli flags, just in parentheses, just some Israeli flags. And sure, I saw some of those European-looking guys peering from their balconies onto the meandering alleys of the old city. But when I tried to see what they were looking at, I saw shopkeepers selling cardamom and cumin and Arabic artifacts and embroidered accessories. I saw women pushing their mint and their za'atar. I saw men marketing keffiyehs and rosaries. I saw locals, I saw my people, I saw Palestinians, I saw Arabs. See, Jerusalem possesses the flavor of many cultures. She reaches out to everybody, even for a skeptic like me. You feel the gravity. But while I know what Jerusalem and Palestine are, I also know what they're not. I know Jerusalem, I know she's not Polish or Hungarian or Russian or from Brooklyn, all right? I know she's an Arab. If she could speak, she would invite me over for dinner and pile too much food on my plate, even when I told her I was stuffed. The lemonade she would serve me would be too sweet, too sour. All right. She would ask me why I wasn't married yet. And she would utter anything to me. I'd understand her, because while Jerusalem and Palestine understand every language, they speak Arabic with a Palestinian accent. And so while I was going through the markets of Jerusalem, I wanted to buy something for my mom. I saw this nice little leather bag, and I did what every Arab does. You know, I walked over. Now I'm always worried when I'm in Palestine that I give like an American vibe, you know, maybe a certain way that I walk, or you know, I don't know. All you Brits, you can tell I'm American from a mile away, right? You know, I feel it. So I'm always worried I'm going to get cheated, you know. But I walked up, I started asking in Arabic, what is the price of this thing? And the shop owner told me, don't worry, you are Ibn al-Balad. You're one of us. Now I don't know what I did to make him think that day. I don't know what I did. And maybe I got the best price, maybe I didn't. But I've been spending the last few years thinking what I did for him to know what it was about me that made him know, like him, I belong there. And that, like him, I am fighting for our rights every day. And make no mistake, if he was here with me today, he would be chanting, "Free, free Palestine." If Malcolm X was here with us today, I make no mistake, he would be chanting, "Free, free Palestine." If Nelson Mandela were with us today, if Rosa Parks were here today, if Martin Luther King were here today, they would all be chanting, "Free, free Palestine." And if Jesus was walking with us today and walking around the streets of Jerusalem with us, you know what he would be saying? 1, 2, 3, 4, we don't want your racist war. 5, 6, 7, 8, free, free Palestine. I love you all, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amer. That was incredible. And I feel the rally spirit. So if we all want to, if you want to stand up, if you want to say the chant, we're here and we're not going anywhere. And in that spirit of rally that we've been brought so beautifully to, we're going to take a quick action break, right? We're 1,000 people strong. We're going to channel that energy into a little bit of action here. This particular action is for the USers in the room. There'll be lots for all of us from all over the world. But for this one, I wanted to bring up a very important piece of legislation in the US Congress called House Resolution 8050 that was introduced by Congresswoman Betty McCollum this summer. It condemns annexation as illegal and illegitimate and calls for a US foreign policy that promotes equality, human rights, and dignity for all Palestinians and Israelis. Most importantly, the bill would prohibit US funds from being used to support annexation of Palestinian land. And every single member of Congress, progressive member of Congress, certainly should be on this bill. Many, though, are pointing to the apartheid plan and the apartheid peace peace agreements led by the Trump administration that we all know are arms deals, with the false idea that annexation has been suspended. We all know that is not the case. We know that annexation was never off the table and that an apartheid reality is the truth on the ground. And so while those of us around the world can keep on chanting, those in the US, I'm going to ask you to follow the link in that we're going to put in the chat here and just quickly send a note to your member of Congress. It's right there at tinyurl.com/sign8050. Ask your members of Congress right now to sign on. There's no excuse for why they shouldn't be. Our money should not be going to annexation and apartheid. So all of us together can do the chant one more time. Free, free Palestine. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your racist wars. 5, 6, 7, 8. Free, free Palestine. Okay, we can also, there's some variations in the chat we can all bring to the streets when we're back in them. For now, so USers keep following that link. And now we're going to turn to our next speaker. I'm so excited to introduce Nadia Silhi Nadia Silhi Shaheen, a Chilean-Palestinian legal researcher who's been a coordinator for BDS in Chile and is now based in Edinburgh. Nadia, we're so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Well, as you said, I'm based in Edinburgh, but I am Palestinian from Chile. So I'm part of the largest Palestinian community outside the Arab world. So today I want to encourage everyone to join the BDS, but especially I would like to encourage Latin Americans and mainly Palestinians from Latin America, the Palestinian diasporas from Latin America, to join the BDS. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, it's what the Palestinian people has asked us to do. Second of all, and I am trying to be brief here, Israel is afraid of the BDS. I mean, so the BDS is working. It's what we have to do. And third, we have been privileged enough in Latin America. You know, we have had the right to do everything, to be free. So we must be in solidarity with our Palestinian brothers and sisters that have been deprived from those rights, you know, by the Israeli colonial and racist rule. I think that it's not enough to raise awareness on the situation in Palestine. We must act, we must boycott, we must divest from, and especially we must sanction Israel. And by this I mean we have to put pressure on our government to sanction Israel according to international law principles. I mean diplomatically, economically, military. I mean, only a few days ago, a new resolution on the self-determination of the Palestinian people was adopted by the UN. And only a few countries voted against this resolution. One of them was Honduras. I think that this is very shameful because Honduras is the second country after Chile to host the largest Palestinian community in Latin America. So there is a lot of work to do for the Palestinian communities in Latin America. We have to do that. You know, we are lucky enough because here in Europe, you know, in the US, in these so-called Western democracies, you know, and this has a lot to do with what you, Stefanie, was saying a few minutes ago. Activists are being criminalized. You know, they are facing smearing campaigns at university campus. They are facing a state repression against them. You know, we have the case of France that was condemned by the European Court of Human Rights in June, and even the court ruled against France. France just adopted a new legislation confirming the legislation, you know, for which it condemned the activists. it's not complying with the European Court of Human Rights judgment. Sorry. So we don't have that in Latin America. We have to endorse BDS. So thank you so much for having me. I feel very, very ashamed of talking after Amer, who is like a star. I'm nothing like that. I'm just like a legal researcher. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all very soon in person in a liberated Palestine. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nadia. We need our legal researcher stars in this movement, as well as our comedians to move us through. So grateful for you and your work. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Rabbi Alissa Wise, also from Jewish Voice for Peace. Rabbi Alissa Wise has been an activist for justice in Israel-Palestine for over a decade in New York City with Jews Against the Occupation, on the West Bank with the International Women's Peace Service, and is the founding co-chair of the JVP Rabbinical Council. She's also the deputy director of JVP and one of my most beloved comrades in the whole world. I'm so happy to pass the mic to Rabbi Alissa Wise.
Thank you, Stefanie. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. For the past few months, a small group of JVP members have been gathering weekly to study the work of Rabbi Aaron Samuel Tamiris. Rabbi Tamiris lived from 1869 to 1931. He served most of his rabbinic career in a small town in Poland. He was an early member and enthusiast of the Zionist movement. He was an elected delegate of the Brisker Zionists to the Fourth Zionist Congress, held in London in August 1900. So why are we studying him? His attendance at that conference led to his resignation from the Zionist movement. At that conference in 1900, he was disturbed to see laid so bare the actual aims and methods of Zionism. While he once thought the project was in the best interest of Jews, he at the conference was deeply disturbed by the lust he saw to steal land and destroy life. This study we are doing of Rabbi Tamiris's work is deeply political and personal, because the Israeli government and their backers, as I assume many, if not all of you know, have crafted a myth that all Jews love Zionism and always have done. This study is just one example of how false that is. It is healing for many of us to know that there were Jews like us so early on in the project of political Zionism. Rabbi Tamiris wrote copious sermons and talks deriding Zionists and encouraging his followers to turn away from the movement. His writings are haunting, as he died before the State of Israel was founded. He died in 1931, yet he describes the risk this project would pose to Palestinian life, describing in eerie detail what happened in 1948 during the Nakba. He knew how it was going to play out. It is powerful for me as an anti-Zionist rabbi in 2020 to reach back in time to a rabbinic voice like his, who in his own way, and even if not self-consciously, was a fierce voice in solidarity with Palestinians. He wrote in 1930, and I quote, "So cynical are the Zionists in calling darkness light that they are not even embarrassed to abuse the testimony of the prophets. Thus, the exalted visions of the end of days have been appropriated and applied by the nationalists to this present disgraceful and vile period, when the abstractions of quote unquote nations and quote unquote sovereign states are quote unquote liberated and actual human beings are murdered. When quote unquote national symbols are invented while man, the living symbol of the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be he, is erased. For our political careerists, however, all this is quite acceptable." End quote. His is a message of true concern for all humanity and a clear-eyed rejection of violent nationalism. I am struck by how much for him his opposition to Zionism was rooted in his love for Jewish people. I'm not sure that the idea of solidarity with Palestinians was a phrase he ever heard or thought, and yet I hear in his words much that mirrors my own experience of the honor and privilege of living a Jewish life in solidarity with Palestine. Like him, my fierce love for Jewishness and Judaism is what motivated and inspired me to become a rabbi and to use my days on earth to ensure the Judaism I pass on is a force for justice and freedom. The solidarity I offer to this movement and this struggle is enriched by my own understanding so very deep in my being that the people who made me, my ancestors who survived, and my ancestors that didn't, to live Jewish lives of meaning and collective care, did so that all people may live. Indeed, so cynical are the Zionists for calling darkness light. The work of solidarity is shining light where it's needed most. It's a profound honor to stand in solidarity with so many bright lights around the globe collected here today. May we share our light together for freedom and justice, and always in good health. Onward.
Thank you, Alissa, Rabbi Alissa Wise, everybody. As we let those beautiful remarks sink in, I'm going to pass the mic again to Maxine Peake for a second poetry reading. Maxine.
Thank you. Just to say, it's been an absolutely extraordinary event. So I'm going to read two pieces this time. So the first one is Detaining a Poem, and that's by Doreen Tuttle. One day they stopped me, shackled me, tied up my body, my soul, my everything. Then they said, search her, we'll find a terrorist within her. They turned my heart inside out, my eyes as well, rummaged through even my feelings. From my eyes, they drew a pulse of inspiration. From my heart, the ability to sketch out meanings. Then they said, beware, she's hiding weapons deep in her pockets. Search her, root out the explosives. And so they searched me. Finally, they said, accusing me, we found nothing in her pockets except letters. We found nothing except a poem. And the second piece is My Grandfather's Cloak by Omar Barghouti. My grandfather, still harbouring the illusion that all is well with the world, fills his countryside pipe for the last time before the advent of the helmets and bulldozers. On the bulldozer's teeth, my grandfather's cloak gets hooked. The bulldozer retreats a few yards, empties its load, comes back to fill its huge fork, and has never had enough. 20 times the bulldozer comes and goes, my grandfather's cloak still hooked on it. After the dust and smoke had cleared from the house that had been standing there, and I was staring at the new emptiness, I saw my grandfather wearing his cloak. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry. I really do apologise. I have not finished. I thought, I do apologise. I've just ruined a beautiful piece of writing. So
no, it was just a pause.
Wearing his cloak, wearing the very same cloak, not one that was similar, but the very same. He hugged me and maintained a silent gaze, as if his look ordained the rubble to become a house, restored the curtains to the windows, brought my grandmother back to her armchair and retrieved her coloured pills, put back the sheets on the bed, the lights on the ceiling, the pictures on the walls, as if his look brought the handles back to the doors and the balconies to the stars, as if it made us resume our dinner, as if the world had not collapsed, as if heaven had ears and eyes. He went on staring at the emptiness. I said, what shall we do after the soldiers leave? What will he do after the soldiers leave. He slowly clenched his fist, recapturing a boxer's resolve in his right hand, his coarse bronze hand. The hand which had tamed the thorny slope, his hand which holds his hoe lightly. And with ease like prayer, his hand which can split a tree stump with a single blow, his hand open to forgiveness, his hand closed on sweets to surprise his grandchildren, his hand amputated years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine. Gorgeous poems read so beautifully. And we have some requests here in the chat to know the names and authors of those and poets of those poems. So we'll put those in as well. We are nearly at the end of our incredible rally. What an amazing lineup. We've been honored to hear from all day. I know I am fired up and feel ready for the road ahead. I wanted to we're going to hear in a minute from our last speaker, but I wanted to just share at the end of the rally, some of our comrades at FOSNA, Friends of Sabeel North America, have another rally after this. So we'll put that in the chat. Don't go yet, but when we're done, we can head there together as sort of a march. Imagine we're at one rally point now and we can march virtually over to there and join them for that fabulous rally. But for now, I can think of no one better to close us out than Omar Barghouti, a prominent Palestinian human rights defender and co-founder of the BDS movement, who received the Gandhi Peace Award in 2017, and is, you know, I'm so honored to get to learn from and be led by daily. Omar, take us home. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Stefanie. Thank you so much, everyone, for your solidarity and for this great rally. The Palestinian BDS National Committee, the largest coalition in Palestine leading the global BDS movement, is calling for action to pressure the United Nations to investigate Israeli apartheid. This is a critical step towards imposing on Israel targeted and lawful sanctions, as was done against apartheid South Africa and what contributed to ending apartheid there. So in the spirit of international solidarity, we urge each and every one of you to mobilize pressure in your institution, pension fund, trade union, church, association, or indeed parliament to endorse the Palestinian call on the United Nations to investigate Israeli apartheid. It's not much to ask. The action alert is on our website at the bdsmovement.net website. You'll find it right there. Again, this is not much that we're asking for. So please don't accept no for an answer from whatever institution you're involved in. Anyone opposing the call on the United Nations to even investigate whether Israel is perpetrating the crime of apartheid against Palestinians is in effect helping to whitewash, maintain, and perpetuate apartheid. So on the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, Palestinians are saying, solidarity is not charity. Solidarity is ethical action to end injustice and to end complicity in the commission of injustice. The most fundamental aspect of solidarity is to do no harm. Do no harm. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that boycotts at the most basic level are equivalent to withdrawing support for an evil system. Just think about that. It's not a charitable act. It's a profound moral obligation to do no harm. If your institution, church, trade union, pension fund, city council, or even state is complicit in Israel's regime of military occupation, settler colonialism, and apartheid, it is doing harm to us, to the Palestinian people. So it becomes incumbent upon you to help end this complicity. Solidarity with the Palestinian people for freedom, justice, and equality today is spelled with 3 letters, BDS. BDS to end occupation, BDS to end the siege and the ethnic cleansing, to end apartheid, and BDS for the right of refugees to return. On this day, as Ben Jamal said at the beginning, let's reflect, let's commemorate, And let's also celebrate. The Black Lives Matter-led uprising against systemic racism is cause for celebration. The millions of women who have descended on the streets from Chile to Europe to India to elsewhere against oppressive systems of patriarchy and misogyny inspire us. The indigenous struggles for ethical decolonization in North and South America, as well as in Australia, New Zealand, and Palestine, give humanity as a whole hope that injustice cannot and will not prevail. The Palestinian heroic steadfastness, or sumud, especially in occupied Jerusalem, is an inspiration to the oppressed everywhere. Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, our heaven on fire, we long to your ancient alleys, we dream of the sight of your domes, the olive trees in your valleys, and the warmth of your homes. Jerusalem, O Jerusalem, our heaven on fire, your freedom is our desire. We'll cross their barbed wire. We'll resist, we won't tire. We'll sing for your glory in choir, our city of peace, our heaven on fire. In the spirit of celebrating our intersectional struggles for indivisible justice, here's the hit song and dance challenge, Jerusalema, that was mentioned earlier by William, and it's music by Master KG and by Nomsebo Zekode, with a Palestinian twist this time, produced by the Popular Arts Center in the occupied city of El Bire. Now we'll play Jerusalema for you with a Palestinian twist.
Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami ilondoloze 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 zungangishilana ilondoloze 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 zungangishilana dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami dawo yami ayikholana buso wami awukholana ilondoloze zuhambe nami Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze ilondoloze
With this, we come to the end of this rally. Thank you so much. We end with hope, with resilience, and with resistance and insistence on achieving our rights, everyone's rights. End to oppression, power to the people.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your racist war. 5, 6, 7, 8. Free Palestine.